I know. I don't want to talk about eye pokes in MMA anymore, and you don't want to talk about eye pokes in MMA anymore, but here we are. We still have to talk about eye pokes in the UFC and MMA at large because it continues to be an issue that persists. It's an issue that is ongoing. It is an issue that's been going on for, 10, 15 years with these fighters? And there has been no effort from the Athletic Commission or the UFC themselves to try and solve this issue. Let's sink our teeth into it. In light of recent events that happened over the past weekend, Song Yadong from China was able to get a technical decision victory over former Olympian and two-division UFC champion Henry Cejudo. The story is, and even, it was a great fight. I was really enjoying this bantamweight fight. The UFC bantamweight division is by far the best division in the UFC. And looking at MMA history right now is maybe one of the best times for, all of bantamweight compared to any other division. Anyway, it's a real great golden age for the bantamweight division is what I'm getting at. And Song Yadong and Henry Cejudo were having a great fight. They were trading calf kicks. Henry Cejudo was faking takedowns. He was coming in upstairs. Because of the calf kicks, he then switched stance to southpaw and then found out that he was having massive success with that very nice jab. And when you have an open stance matchup like that, Song Yadong did the right thing, that you try to control the lead hand. So this is an open stance matchup, so it's orthodox against a southpaw opponent. Open stance is what we call it. And your hands are going to be colliding quite a bit. And what you try to do is control your opponent's lead hand and then get your foot just on the outside to come through with the cross. And a few times it was working really well. Song Yadong was attacking the body, controlling the lead hand, and Henry Cejudo was working around it and having massive success. So he was using his jab and then feinting it, essentially, and then coming in with something else. And the reason he was doing that because Song Yadong was trying to parry the jab in the open stance matchup. Southpaw to orthodox was trying to parry the jab every single time. When you're parrying the jab, as you do when you train in the gym, you're just going to use your glove and push their hand down because you're going to try to control their hand. And then what we saw was a combination of factors that I just listed out. Henry was faking a jab, ducking low to come across with a cross. Song Yadong puts his hand out because he's ready to parry the jab. It just so happens that it is in the same path as Henry Cejudo's eyeball. So he sticks two fingers into Henry Cejudo's eye. What happens next? A series of different events. Jason Herzog, the referee, followed the rules to a T, followed the rules very closely, almost did it perfectly. The problem largely has to do with the rules. So what happened in the end? And that's the key point that really matters here. Song Yadong performed a foul in a fight and then got the victory. That's it. We can argue about all sorts of different factors, what went wrong, what the rules are, what the referee did, blah, blah, blah. At the end of the day, someone broke the rules and then was rewarded for it with an automatic victory. So the argument is that it was an inadvertent accidental foul that he performed, and now his opponent was unable to continue because of it. But it was an accident. Not only that, but they forced the fight to go into the fourth round. So that way we have, a quorum of rounds that have happened. And that way we can go to the judges' scorecard. Most of the fight has gone by, so we can just jump and go to the judges' scorecard. Rather than a no contest or a disqualification, you would rather go to the judges' scorecard. Is that the right decision to make, though? I really don't know. Because look at the factors. Let's say I'm in a 2-round fight and I get really tired after 2 rounds. I'm going to lose the 3rd round. I might get knocked out in the 3rd round, but I'm probably up 2 rounds. Can I just drive my fingers into my opponent's eye? He can't continue. Let's go to the judges' scorecards. I get the automatic win. Same thing. I'm in a 5-round fight. We've got 3 rounds in the books. I am exhausted and I'm up 3 rounds. I will get knocked out or submitted if we go into the 4th and 5th round. How about I just drive my fingers into my opponent's eye so that he can't continue? Well, let's go to the judges' scorecards. I get the automatic win. I cheated. We only did 3 rounds. And I poked my opponent. Look, Song Yadong did accidentally, inadvertently do it. That was an absolute accident. I understand that. He's an incredible and a talented fighter. He's one of my favorites to watch. It was weird that he came out after the 5-minute break with his hands splayed out. Like the warning meant nothing. It was like the referee was giving him directions. The ref was like, don't come out with your hands splayed out. I'm giving you a hard warning. Don't do this. And then Song Yadong was like, right, so do this. Just stick it right in his face. Let's see how that goes. Is that the right move to make? Your opponent can't continue because of something you did, even if it was an accident. Compare that to other sports. High sticking in hockey. If I accidentally put my stick through my opponent's helmet and the stick goes into his eyeball or up his nose or into his mouth and breaks his jaw, doesn't matter if it was an accident. Do I not get a penalty if it was an accident? You know what I mean? How much, compared to any other sport that you follow or know, does offside make a difference in football if it's European international football? If it's an accident, it's just a matter of what action was done. I feel like is more important than whether or not we're judging it based on whether or not it was an accident or not. But why is that the rule when the rule doesn't stay? So the rule doesn't say, don't poke your opponent in the eye, but if it's an accident, then go for it. You know what I mean? The rule is, don't put your fingers in your opponent's eye. It's not, but the situation is dependent on if you did it by an accident. If it was an inadvertent, then it's okay. Yeah. What is the rule? Don't do that. But he broke the rule and got the win for it. Interesting precedent to set there. So Henry Cejudo officially got a loss on his record, and it was a great fight. He was behind 3 rounds. What I do like about Henry Cejudo is that he's always a gamer. He is a thinking fighter, and that's what makes him such a good coach, is that he's extremely intelligent. And you can see him making tactical adjustments throughout the fight. Even though he was down 3 rounds, you can really see him kind of thinking, trying different things, making adjustments here and there, finding a few things that work, right? The body kick didn't work. Calf kick did work. Jab on from the southpaw stance did work. So we're going to try to use those and build more of a game. So what I'm saying, he may have been down 3 rounds and he still maybe had the ability to do well in rounds 4 and 5. We don't know that. He could have won by submission or knockout. We don't know. This is Henry Cejudo, an Olympian and 2-division UFC champion. And the reason that matters is because people have been doubting his grit, his determination, his fortitude. Some people are trying to claim, oh yeah, he quit on the stool and he was trying to get his opponent DQ'd. You are doubting the fortitude and determination and toughness of an Olympian? Of a gold medal Olympian? A 2-division UFC champion? You think this guy doesn't have grit? Doesn't have fortitude? And look, you're saying, oh, he quit on the stool and he quit on the stool. No, he didn't. No, he did not. He could not see. Put it into perspective. Let's say a fighter sits down on the stool and the swelling goes over their eye on the right side. The doctor is going to come in and say, oh, you can't see out of that eye because of the swelling. Let's call the fight then. Henry Cejudo was sitting there with a similar condition and said, I can't see out of my eye. Same thing, if the doctor comes in due to swelling and it's covering both your eyes, the fight's going to be called off because you can't see. It doesn't matter if it was purposely done or accidentally done. If a fighter can't see, something needs to be done. So no, he didn't quit on the stool. And yeah, of course he told the referee to take a point. That is the question. So Jason Herzog did follow the rules perfectly, as the rules are laid out. Maybe the rules aren't great, but he largely followed exactly what the rules were. Except he really should have taken a point away for cheating. The reason that referees are largely hesitant to take away points in any scenario is that 1 point in a 3-round fight is massive, right? That's a third. Now you've lost a third of the potential point you could get. 5-round fight, it's a fifth. So the margins that we're working on are very small here. And that's why most referees are very hesitant to take a point. When was the last time that you saw fouling be punished in the UFC? Maybe you lose the position, maybe you get a hard warning, or maybe you just get yelled at, but you get to, keep your advantage. At the end of the day, cheating in the UFC goes unpunished. You can cheat in the UFC. The rule is that you can put your fingers in your opponent's eye. You can do a 12-6 elbow. You can grab the fence off of a takedown. You can grab their shorts. You can grab your shorts. It is probably going to go unpunished. At worst, you'll lose the position. At best, you'll get warned. Now, here's the funny thing about being warned, is that all of these MMA athletes, if you are in the UFC, you probably have 10 professional MMA fights. You're training in the gym 9 to 5 and you have at least 10 professional MMA fights to your name. These people don't need a warning. They know the rules. The rules didn't change from the last fight to this fight. They're not confused by the rules. Oh, I didn't know I couldn't poke my opponent in the eye. I didn't know I couldn't grab the fence. I didn't know I couldn't grab their shorts. The rules haven't changed. Don't act like you don't know the rules. So why are you giving them a warning for a rule that they definitely know? Additionally, if they need a warning, give them a warning in the back. I'm warning you now. This is a hard warning. Don't poke your opponent in the eye. That's it. There's your warning. We did it in the back. Now, if they poke their opponent in the eye, you can take a point from it. Okay. UFC veteran Jim Miller holds the record for among the UFC record for most fights in UFC history. He's fought at UFC 100, 200, and I think 300 as well. Jim Miller said it is culture more than equipment. And he said that referees need to start taking points because it goes unpunished. People will continue to parry punches just like this rather than that, just because it goes unpunished. And, in the training room, when you have the big gloves on, this is a completely reasonable way to parry punches. Once you have the small gloves on, things can start getting in your way. And I can't help but agree. Punish the fighters. And this is Jim Miller, who was eye gouged in one of his fights and had to continue on. Bilal Muhammad, another UFC champion. I remember his Leon Edwards fight where you could get the photograph of the finger going into the eyelid and pulling the eyelid out. He was temporarily blinded and he was laying on the canvas blind. And largely it went unpunished. It didn't matter. But this all comes back to all these things continue to happen. Fabricio Verdum and all these types who had really bad eye pokes and eye gouges in the UFC. It goes unpunished, but the structure doesn't change. Athletic commissions aren't doing anything and the UFC is also not doing anything. Athletic commissions do have the power to do a little bit more about taking points. They could absolutely start doing that. And the UFC could do a lot more because it does have influence. People are quick to be like, hey, the UFC doesn't have any influence. It is the athletic commissions. That's not true at all. The UFC goes to athletic commissions and says, these are our rules and these are our gloves. The athletic commission, whether it's around the world or dependent on the US state, they can approve or deny it. But 100% of the time they approve it. But so the UFC ultimately has full control. The UFC largely has full influence over athletic commissions, but they submit their gloves, submit their rules, and the athletic commission says, yeah, looks good. Also on their gloves, they can pick their gloves as they go in. Both forms of the UFC gloves, the new ones and the old ones, are approved across all US states and internationally. The new UFC gloves, I'm getting mixed up because they're the new UFC gloves, but now they're the old UFC gloves, and the old UFC gloves are now back. So let's call them the gold UFC gloves. The ones that they introduced last year for just a handful of pay-per-views. They probably drove down knockout rates, which was weird, but they seem to just have a slight curve to them, and that was enough to maybe stop eye pokes. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was doing more than nothing. And now we're back to the point where we're doing nothing about it. The old style UFC gloves, which are back now, are quite stiff in terms of how they're formed. So they are going to put your hands mainly like this. And then to make a fist, it does require some effort. So what a lot of referees do is they will put the gloves on a shelf curled under like that so that they naturally have some curve to them. Cool. That's a really good solution. It's a really easy workaround that should be done more. And it's not going to be 100%, and that's okay. Just some progress is better than absolutely nothing. But something needs to be done. Something needs to be changed. You need to punish the fighters and make adjustments to the gloves is the least that you can do. We're not talking about some cute little rule that has a few, knees to the head of a grounded opponent or grabbing your opponent's shorts or something like this. We're talking about a rule that can change someone's life overnight. Henry Cejudo still can barely see out of his eye. A lot of fighters required surgery. Like Stipe Miocic required surgery after one of his eye rakes. I've seen a lot of people also talk about, the Bellator gloves, which were with Everlast. They did an okay job. Not perfect by any means, but again, it was just a small effort in the right direction, and then we can adjust over time. But just making that small effort makes a massive difference. People have also talked a lot about the Pride FC gloves, and I'm a little bit surprised by that because, Yeah, the Pride FC gloves maybe avoided eye pokes, but they kind of sucked at everything else. So the Pride FC gloves were essentially just like an open palm with something on the back of the hand. And then you had individual finger loops for each finger and the thumb. And then there was laces on the wrist. So quite often in Pride fights, and the reason I'm surprised people keep saying the Pride gloves is, yes, they did avoid eye pokes, but that was an accident. The Pride gloves, at least once an event, they would stop the fight to fix the gloves because either the laces came untied or a finger slipped out of the finger loops. The Pride gloves were not great. They were actually kind of bad, but yeah, they did pull your hand down. They did force your hand into being like that, and they avoided eye pokes. Interestingly, Boss Rutan did have a talk about this because he used to fight in Pancrase, which was bare knuckle. Sorry, it was bare knuckle, no gloves, but they didn't allow punches in Pancrase at the time, so you had to do open palm strikes. And there weren't any eye pokes. It was just the culture at the time. But I think a lot of those are an example of the meta, right? Striking in Pancrase was not the level that the striking that it is today. Even striking in that like 2008, 2010 era, I loved. It was a great, incredible era of the UFC and MMA overall, but it's not quite where it is today, where people are doing a lot more active parrying, a lot more different stuff. So the meta has changed quite a bit, where people are doing a lot more hand control than they used to. And because of that, we're getting a lot more eye pokes. And look, we have to start doing something here. The Athletic Commission has to do something. The UFC has to do something, whatever it might be. It's just, we've had too many terrible moments, too many close calls. Does someone have to lose an eye before we do anything? We need to have preventative measures ahead of time. And look, I'm tired of talking about eye pokes. You're tired of talking about eye pokes, but we ultimately need an eye poke reform at the end of the day. Thank you.